I had been trying to get my hands on some LSD from my friend, but we never had the chance to meet up. I had been wanting to try something crazy that would make me hallucinate. I was searching around the internet for any possible over-the-counter substances I can use to achieve the same effect. I found out that Benadryl could cause some pretty intense hallucinations, so I purchased a bottle of 100 capsules that had 25 milligrams of DPH in it. I went home and waited for my parents to go to bed. I took 20 of the 25 milligram pills, which brought me to 500 milligrams, and I waited. In about 10 minutes, the first thing I noticed was that the blanket next to me appeared to be breathing. Later, I began to feel really heavy and relaxed. It felt almost as if I was 500 pounds. It was incredible. I felt this sensation for about 10 more minutes, then it got crazy. I started to see an intense, weird, swirly warping pattern all over the walls. I saw spiders crawling all over the furniture and on my arms. Surprisingly, the bugs didn't seem to scare me. I would see dark, shadowy figures in the corner of my eye. When I looked directly at them, they disappeared. This really started to freak me out. I started to feel nauseous. I got up to walk to the bathroom. I was incredibly uncoordinated and constantly was stumbling over myself. I remember feeling really dizzy. I finally made it to the restroom and bent over the toilet to vomit. Nothing came out. I looked in the mirror and was completely terrified by my own reflection because I didn't even recognize my own self. I quickly ran away back to the couch I was previously sitting on. My heart began to beat incredibly fast. I was overcome by a feeling of intense paranoia as I remember reading that people have gone into cardiac arrest while tripping off Benadryl. I was fearing for my life and was waiting to die at any second. My breathing became incredibly unbalanced. My legs started feeling restless, like I could hardly even stay still. I began having intense audio and visual hallucinations. I kept hearing these voices in my head like there was a radio playing in the background. I had hallucinated that my mom walked towards me and told me to go to bed. I looked at her again, and she was gone. My heart began beating even faster and harder, like a machine gun was going off in my chest. I felt really nauseous and had incredible restlessness in my legs. My hands were shaking so bad I could hardly contain myself. I remember being curled up into a ball, squirming my legs, shaking, and crying while constantly being attacked by these horrifyingly vivid hallucinations. I eventually passed out. I woke up the next morning on the floor. I felt a lot better than I did the night before. I immediately went upstairs to my medicine cabinet and threw the pills away in the garbage. This experience was very traumatizing. I will never forget what this evil, sinful drug did to me. My friend took 500 milligrams of Benadryl and wanted me to trip sit, so I did. You can find all the information about what diphenhydramine does in other places, but if you have done it completely alone, here are some things that you may not know. My friend was talking to me, to some other hallucinations, and then without warning, she blanked out for 15 minutes. Her eyes were still open, but they were looking all around like she was blind. I held her hand, tried to talk to her, and shook her a bit. She fell down from her sitting position on the bed and still didn't move at all. Her eyes were still open and wandering. It was like her brain had shut off all of her senses. Then she came back and didn't realize she had been gone, though she did ask when the last time she had gotten up was. I was checking her heart rate. It started at 85 before she took the 500 milligrams. Then it went up to 120 about 90 minutes in. Second check. This is the most important part that I want you to know. We both went to sleep after a few hours, and 2 hours after she fell asleep, I woke and checked her pulse. It was 56 beats per minute. Her hands and feet were like ice. Her skin was insanely pale, and she looked like she was dying. Her breaths were shallow. I tried to wake her up, but I couldn't. I got scared. I shook her quite violently, enough to even wake the deepest sleeper, and she didn't move at all. I talked to her. I held her hand. I thought she was dying. I blocked her nose and mouth for 15 seconds, and she didn't flinch. That's the terrifying part. Someone could have raped her or killed her if she had been in an unsafe place and blacked out. I admit, I thought of a lot of things to wake her up which I would never do. Pain, hot, cold. I was horribly afraid. She started moving around about 30 minutes after that, and she was alright in the morning, but I need to let you guys know. Diphenhydramine seems to slowly take pieces away from you and shut off your brain. It's like a sped up version of dementia, and the spike fall in heart rate, her brain had made her senses completely shut off. It was terrifying. It is terrifying what it can do to your body. I'm not necessarily telling anyone not to do it. Do what you want. I'm just warning you all because I do care. I felt like my friend could have slipped into a coma with her eyes wandering around blindly and never come out. Please, be careful. Lately, I have become interested in trying Benadryl in a recreational dosage. I searched up a lot of stuff about it on Google before I embarked on my new experience, and what I found was, people most commonly see spiders, cobwebs, moths, Slender Man, etc. Mainly scary shit. Also, it is reported that people experience a heavy, drippy feeling that makes it difficult and heavy to walk. People have said it is an interesting drug, and it produces absolutely no euphoria, and the cons definitely outweigh the pros. So let's get down to my experience. The first time I tried it, I took 150 milligrams, and nothing happened besides a good night's sleep. But this time, I upped the dosage to 450 milligrams, and here's what happened. 6:30 p.m., 150 milligrams down the hatch. 6:40 p.m., another 150 milligrams down the hatch. 6:50. Went to the bathroom and felt slightly heavier and more confused. I also tried talking and my speech was slightly slurred. When I got back in my room, I swallowed another 150 milligrams and finished my water. 7:30. Hallucinations begin along with a tingling sensation throughout my body, even though I barely can feel anything. I feel like nothing exists except my head and eyes. The first thing I begin to notice with the visuals is one big cobweb filling one corner of my room. This scares the piss out of me, and for some reason I think it is real even though it is not. 8 o'clock. I see a face outside my window. That also scares the fuck out of me. I keep staring around wondering if I will see bugs, even though I do not want to. 9 o'clock. Everything starts going topsy-turvy. I feel like I'm losing my sanity. I start drifting in and out of sleep, and every time I sleep, I dream about my parents yelling at me. Why the fuck did you get high off Benadryl, you fucking moron? I dream of other bad dreams. Nightmares that are too hard to remember today, but every fucking dream I had I thought was real. I woke up and would still be talking like I was in the dream until I realized I was awake again. I also saw a spider dancing right when I woke up around 9. It was on top of my blanket, and I could almost feel it. I was so sure it was real, even though it wasn't. 9:30. I passed out for 20 minutes. When I wake up, I look around, and surprisingly, I feel sober. But when I turn to look in front of me, I am greeted by a red and black snake, and it sticks its tongue out and hisses. I scream, "What the fuck?" And I flew out of my bed and hit the back wall. I kept seeing and hearing the snake for the rest of the night, and it slithers to the side of my bed and goes under it and taunts me until I fall asleep. 9:40. I see a pixelated army man the size of my finger walking out a doorway, and I just look away. I bury my head in my pillow. 9:50. I get up to go to the bathroom and do this as fast as I can, as I really want to be in the comfort of my own room. When I get back in my room, there is a baseball ticket taped behind my light. I knew this wasn't real, so I ignored it. As I got into bed, I think my curtain is a giant beetle, but after looking at it for a while, I notice it is not. This is when I finally calm down and just take a few deep breaths and say to myself, dude, you're just tripping, you're fine, none of it's real. 10 o'clock. I fall asleep after refusing to stay awake and just keep my head in my pillow no matter what. I wake up a few times in the night, but I just keep trying to sleep. I slept until 8 the next morning. I surprisingly feel really refreshed and awake, unlike most people the day after tripping on Benadryl. Well, that's it, guys. I am going to describe one of the most disturbing experiences of my life. and of my family's, following a very high dosage of diphenhydramine. It started late one night. I was bored and wanted to get high off something. I was feeling depressed and had no access to any other drugs. I have had a lot of experience with psychedelics, so I thought it would be fun to explore a diphenhydramine trip. This was a big mistake. I was alone in my room around 11 o'clock when my family was in bed. I had a full bottle of Benadryl and took 1 gram, or 1,000 milligrams, of Benadryl. 12 o'clock. About an hour later, I was feeling very sedated and I started having mild hallucinations. All the lights were off in my room and I could see the silhouette of objects starting to form in thin air, though I could not ascertain what they were. I also started seeing clear spiders form on my bed, which I did not like because there are brown recluse spiders in my house and I could not tell if they were real or not, so I turned on the lights. 12:30. This is when my memory went completely blank. I do not remember a thing about the trip during the night, but I know now I was awake the whole time because of the shape of my room in the morning. 7 a.m. This is when things got very scary. I came back to awareness with my mom talking to me on my bed. I could feel I was very intoxicated, but I didn't remember what I took. My mom was very close to my face and looking at me very strangely. Finally, she asked what I was on. I told her nothing, but my mental state and body language was very revealing. Being in the middle of a very intense trip and having my mom aggressively question me and giving me very suspicious and threatening looks sent me into a state of paranoia that eventually evolved into a full-blown paranoid psychotic state. 8 a.m. At this point, my whole house was aware that I was in an altered state. I was in a state of sheer terror as everyone around me was questioning me and staring at me. I was so wired up with fear, paranoia, and disorganized thoughts that my eyelids were pried open, receding nearly into my eye sockets, giving me a psychotic look. My brother, who has seen a lot of psychotic and schizophrenic people while he was homeless, said I had the classic look in my eyes and face of someone suffering with schizophrenia, a look of terror and complete confusion. Accompanied by the insane look in my eyes, I was having paranoid auditory hallucinations of voices and disorganized speech and thought processes. 8 to 9 a.m. At this point, I felt nearly brain dead. My short-term memory was completely gone. I would begin a sentence and then completely forget what I was talking about. Or one of my family members would ask me something, and I would start answering it, and then forget what they asked, and what I was saying in response. Even worse, I was having vivid auditory hallucinations of my family members saying things to me that they weren't, and the hallucinations were in their tone of voice and mannerisms. I would see their mouths move to what I thought they were saying as well. It was impossible to tell what was real or what was not. I was completely paranoid and kept hearing them saying negative things about me or our relationships. This started a long process of having arguments with my family members about things they did not say. In the midst of this experience, I was talking complete gibberish about esoteric ideas one might have during an acid trip, and how they related to subjects or ideas that had no connection to what I was saying or to any conversation I was in the middle of having with my family. My family said the things I was saying were so crazy they could not describe it. The whole time, I thought I was making sense. 9 to 10 a.m. My memory at this point became so bad, and my body movements and language were so unnatural and disorganized that my brother began to fear for his life, because I was lost in a deep psychotic state. He told me afterwards the look on my face was that of the mass murderer James Holmes in one of his lineup photos. My brother armed himself with a Bowie knife because he did not know what I was capable of. My mom was so afraid to enter the room I was in, she had to push my brother in it to deal with me. I do not remember much of what the actual experience of the mental state was, but I remember it feeling very much like what I would think someone with schizophrenia or psychosis experiences. No way to differentiate what is real or not, and little awareness of one's actions, thoughts, or words. I believe I was in a drug-induced psychosis. As far as the visual hallucinations, they were very similar to coming up on a shroom trip, with very wavy walls and moving objects. But the most profound part of the experience was the head state and delusional and disorganized thoughts. 10 to 11 a.m. Finally, I began to come down off the drug and could make more sense of reality, and my short-term memory came back. I gave up trying to talk to my family because I could not determine if they were really saying anything or not. I looked around my room, and I had thrown medication everywhere. I urinated in a chair, on my bed, and on the carpet sometime during the night. I feel most sorry for my family who had to watch me literally lose my mind and fear that I might not be sane again. I tried to talk to my brother about the experience a week later to find out what had happened. He said it was one of the most scariest experiences of his life, and he has witnessed a decapitation. He could not describe the nature of my mental state or what I was saying. I see it now as one of those experiences where there are very subtle details that are hard to describe, and the experience as a whole was so complex that the depth of its disturbing nature cannot be put into words. It took me nearly a week to recover. I was hallucinating for days. I would stop hallucinating for a little while, go to sleep, and then wake up hallucinating again, and feel like I was back in the same headspace. Luckily, the hallucinations and dissociative feelings went away after a week. I will never do Benadryl in high doses again, and I strongly recommend not trying this drug. In retrospect, the experience did give me great insight into what schizophrenic or psychotic person experiences. It's as if the wires in your brain cross, and the processing of intercommunicating data in your brain mix, and the resulting perceptual experiences and self-expression is idiosyncratic to your surrounding reality and the events taking place. So you are left saying things that you think make sense and have meaning to people that don't exist. You are left hopelessly confused and convinced by the vivid hallucinations and delusions your mind validates. It has also left me with a great sympathy towards psychotic and schizophrenic people, because that state was hellish for me and for my family.